Much. It's a real honor for me to be part of this excellent organization that not only to Anomaly alumni, to all the aspiring entrepreneurs around the world. It's no doubt that we live in a very unprecedented crisis at this time. Many leaders uh, concerned, confused, same as all of us. We all are the engineers, business owners. We built this business with our sweat and blood and everything that we have owned. We have the business now. The question now is, what do we have to do with this COVID-19 situation? Do we have to find the new ways to adapt to the new normal? By the way, the new normal is the word that's everywhere. Everyone is talking about it, which we never thought that this is the world that we are going to be living in. I think adaptability is the key. I have been speaking with a lot of business people, and they say, enough is enough. Let's find an exit strategy. Are we done altogether? Or let's just quit. Okay, whatever we can get, let's get out of this business. Or let's just say that, there must be some ways. We can't just leave what we built. So these are a lot of questions we have. These are a lot of questions we have, and I just thought that this evening I can give you some answers as to how we can stay together, as I have found my own ways to stay and supposed to take my business forward and not give up, because this is the only thing that I know. I don't know anything else, so I just can't give up. So, so therefore, the key question is whether your business going forward will be pandemic proof or rather, recession proof. So fortunately, I found a way. Probably I'm lucky to have accomplished both. So, as the moderator put it, the definition of macroeconomics is that the government, giant corporations, they're all responsible to focus to create the GDP and to take care of people, health, safety, roadways, infrastructures, taxes, and things like that. How do we get there? I think that's because of the way that the responsible leaders and responsible corporate leaders and politicians, they are focused to create those atmosphere to create the macroeconomics so that the GDP is increased, the people are living happy, and so on and so forth. But the microeconomics, as we all of you know, it's an individual level where the individual business leaders take care of their employees, take care of their clients, and create a fortune to themselves, as well as provide life, everything to the employees, so that they can contribute to local economy and things like that. But in the unfavorable situation, uh, that's where we are at now. The unfavorable situation is creating pandemics, hurricanes. Who would have thought that we would have known this virus called the coronavirus 19? We did not know this about 5 6 months ago. So we are here. So we have to face it. So the questions that we need to be concerned with are: where are we now? What some leaders say about today about the economy, where the future is headed to, and what are we going to do? What are the U.S. business companies are doing, and who are the winners and losers? Okay, with the winners, you think about China now. China is probably is making more money than anyone else by selling all these, the PPE equipment, and Amazon is making more money than they ever made before, and uh, and I think that the situation now is that sadly in the United States we have almost 2 million plus cases increased, and about 110, 115 more people have passed. And also, many parts of the world, in India now, we are getting more cases, and even some governments have given up, saying that, hey, you have to learn to live with it. So, and but the governments are doing their own part. Several countries like Indonesia, Singapore, India, United States, Germany, all these people, either they are paying people salary, the citizens are getting paid some money a little bit here and there. However, the GDP is going to go down. There's no doubt about it. So I think that as a small company, how we want to be able to go with the flow and insulate your business, kind of shield, so that a you can continue to do business. B, how you want to do the business, keeping your employees, and not to be kind of penetrated with any of this virus situation. So I think in the hope is the word. I just heard today that chairman, Google chairman, was talking about how you should be hopeful. The technology is the word that I wanted to talk about, because I think that the crisis always creates some inventions. We all know 1918 pandemic flu influenza killed almost 3% of global population, but that didn't leave the scientists and the engineers and the business people to just give up the hope. They invented so many vaccines, and that vaccine creation created so many sub businesses all around the world. People can freely live kind of situations. So I think, like I mentioned before, this crisis is no doubt a world-changing event, but we must prepare, and that's the kind of situations where I saw that in order for us to prepare, are we going to be thinking about, because of Google, because of the internet, the world is flat? I don't think so. I think for another at least seeable, foreseeable future of the next 5 years, I think that we must restrict ourselves to be locally distant, not thinking about global, no more flat, because of. I have two reasons why I believe that's the case. In at least in the last 3 or 4 years, this nationalistic attitude of political leaders, America is for America, France is for France. Hopefully, there are good news, like like for example, Canadian president says that's not the case, but we live in that situation now. So in order to do that, we have to look at the immigration, what immigration is process is going on in this country, visa restrictions. So having people from India to come here, or having people working from India to here, going to be restricted. Therefore, we all have to think about how we want to do our own business within our reach, meaning with our employees, with our supply chain, and that will be the one key factor how we can insulate your business. That's one thing. And the other thing I'm going to talk about all the time is resiliency. The resilience, uh, simple, nothing but its ability to absorb shock, whether physically or emotionally or whatever it is. If you are resilient, okay, so resiliency is the key word in the business today, where you should be able to move forward to bring your resources closer to the market, and that's how your local business can be surviving. So therefore, survival is the fittest. Obviously, we all know. In 2008 financial crisis, the data shows that a small group of companies that are so resilient, they are willing to take chances to go to the clients to do things that they want, even at lower cost, cutting the operating cost. Even at the lower cost, they were able to provide the services, and they were pretty strong, and that's how they were able to outperform other sectors who are not resilient. So they had a stronger balance sheet. The stronger balance sheet, what I mean by that is, have some money for rainy days. I want to tell you a small story here that I used to work for a company in 1989 to 1988. I worked for a company. There were two bosses. December 31st, these two guys will look at the book, and then they will leave a little bit money, and then the rest will be split 50-50. There's no money. Next January 1, they will start. So it happens that after 3 months, they did not have money even to pay the payroll. Payroll is the biggest killer. So you need to take care of your people, because the people who work for you depend on you. Their kids' children's education, their car insurance, their car payments, their mortgage, everything is dependent on you. In my language, so I always think that that the employment is a two-way contract. That is, they work for you, Nobody is doing any favor to anyone else, So work for you, so you pay them. So you have to pay them every 15th. There has to be payroll. So what these guys used to do is they didn't have money, and then they have to mortgage their houses to pay to keep some good employees. So I think that in this day and age, you should have enough finance bank balance so that your employees trust you and your client will think that this is a healthy company that they can do business with. So therefore, my recommendation is to just keep enough money to pay and to be trustworthy to your employees. So the other thing is stimulus to lift your economy. So we talked about this, all this government spending and everything else. So I'll just skip this slide. So invest in employees, but weed out the disloyal ones. I don't need to be negative, but I think that in this pandemic, I think 8 weeks I had left my people work from home, and some good and bad. The good is we were able to somehow pull on because my company was defined as an essential company because the 95% of my clients are hospitals, and therefore whatever they need to do at this time that we need to do so that they can concentrate on taking care of these COVID patients and things like that. This is the last thing that they will worry about is the non-compliance so that they can avoid the penalties. So we take the brunt of the burden to take care of that regulatory compliance. Um, but so the people were working from home, and so after 4 weeks, my vice president was doing a project meeting. Then he found out that then he was opening his statement by saying, "Thank you very much for being so loyal. But how come you guys, when you come to the office every day, one person will be sick, another person will go to doctor appointment, this and that, and all. No, how come you guys are, logging 9.5 hours per day, and then nobody gets sick? Why? How?" The answer is that there are this COVID-19 tested all of us. It's still testing, but some loyal employees were noted, and then disloyal ones are still there. I think that we should now know who to keep and who to eliminate in order to insulate your business from employee point of view. The idea of, as we all know, in business, profit, people, and the planet. I'll get to the planet part later on, but it's a pretty important for us to be able to stand, able to substantiate our business. So by trying to please everybody, we can't please nobody. So I think that we need to be able to look at that employees also. Then changing industry structure, consumer behavior, market positions, all of them are changing. So therefore, I think my prime goal is to serve the client. By serving the client in MBA they teach that you make fortune. By serving you yourself, your business to serve you for your own needs. If you really serve the client with the sincerity and hard work, you make the fortune. So how do you do that? I think we need to understand and be cognizant of the fact that the industry structure is changing right now. Market behavior changes, consumer behavior changes. And if I want to do a cold call now to do my business, that's a no because they are all taking care of this, situation. So we need to adopt a different tactics. The tactics would be, I will be willing to do more work at less cost. I will respond to any changes. I will team up with someone. Team up in the sense that I have another slide somewhere. I have come up with this formula: 1 plus 1 is equal to 3. I'll get to that later on. So it's possible that institutions must find new, enduring ways to collaborate. Collaboration is the key. In my business, regulatory changes happen all the time. So how we are very successful is because um, we are responding to mandatory requirements by regulatory changes. These regulatory is changes are mandated by central, federal, state, and local government. In order to serve to the needs of these changes, then we have to find new ways to do that. It's a struggle actually. So, so therefore, diversification is the key. What I mean by that is that see, one plus one is in business is three, because if you are a small company, if you want to collaborate with another company, that becomes one plus one to reap more benefit because of the collaboration and diversification. But on the other hand, if you are not resilient, if you are stubborn, hey, my father invented this business, I just did my engineering and I took over from my father, life is good and all of them, not anymore. Meaning this one business, one product, depending upon one client. What happens? If this one product is not liked by that one client, that's one minus one is obviously zero. So, in order for you to unlock the growth, to be very potential and sustain your growth in business, you have to adopt this one plus one equal to three model. That means local dependency, enough stockpiles, and diversification is the key. So, preparedness and resiliences are the two key traits. And many of you know elastic versus non-elastic. Elastic is, you know, if your product is elastic is the word in business where the product, if you change the cost, the product demand will go up or down. Okay, uh, you know, if it is non-elastic, no matter what you do, the product will be demanded by your customer. So we have to think about this strategy, whatever industries that you are in. Okay, your product must be required by your client no matter what, but you can change course here and there depending upon the situation. Okay, so let me touch upon other topic, which is the digitally working are better in shape than others to face the challenges. So the digital world, I think that Ravi Kumar knows this much better than me. And today I was reading a speech by Sundar Pichai that he gave a keynote address from 2020 classes from his backyard. One of the things that he's talking about is that he talks about all his how he came to Stanford and so things. That one thing that touched my heart is that he was hungry to get a computer. He did not have a computer until he arrived in the United States about 27 years. And that perception of computer and programming and digital thirst that led him to this stage as a CEO of Google tells one thing, that is, we all in our own generation, we are frustrated with technology. Even to for me to share my screen yesterday was a little bit of a struggle. But I think that hard to digitize or people dependent sectors are the least resilient sectors. So you need to somehow get onto the technology. Without the technology, you can't go anywhere. Any business for that matter. I will touch base later on what we did to shield my business from my competitions through the use of the technology. That's the part that the India office is handling for me. So the bottom line is the early adoption of digitally enabled business. So the staff augmentation is the word that I have recently learned that we adopted. We are adopting to many of our clients. I'll just give you an example that I found out that less resilient sectors people, although they are less resilient, what they can do, they can actually loan their workers to highly resilient industries. Okay, because I think the data shows that in Germany, many industries bounced back quickly after their financial crisis, adopting this process rather than hiring people and training them. So what they did was, what they do is, they kind of loan from one to the other, kind of collaboration in this way. What I do is I'm promoting an idea of in this crisis time, we will send my engineers, one or two will be stationed in their location. It's a sort of like outsourcing process, but at least we are able to provide continued employment, and B, we are going to get revenues. And me as a businessman, I'm thinking that by people being there in that location, I am kind of protecting my business from competitions to not to get in. And plus, this engineer will be smelling, snuffing, and sniffing and find other opportunities. And we from the back office provide more services. This is a win-win for everybody. So that's the one concept that I have, which is the staff augmentation. Then we talk about work from home. Um, we talk about this, the people are hurt. Dry cleaners, nobody dress up anymore. They are hurt. Transportation industry hurt. Office spaces and real estate pretty badly hurt. Hotels and taxis and restaurants and things like that. And again, productivity depends on industry. Why? Because again, we have to be. We are dependent as a business. We depend on employees, and the employees depend on us. But we need to be aware of those that take advantage of the situation. I wanted to kind of say, I don't know how many audiences from how many participants from the United States here. Here the government is the federal government is giving about $600, and the state is giving about $405,000. A worker gets from home from the government, which is approximately about $48,000 salary per year. If it's a salon worker or a hotel restaurant worker, he never gets in his life $48,000 while he is employed. But now, for at least for 6 months, I believe that they will continue to get this kind of money. God bless them. However, if I am the restaurant owner, I'm depending upon my restaurant worker. He's not going to come back to me. These are all some political mumbo jumbo going on. I'm sure they will find a way, but that's something that's going on. I just will quickly go through this slide. Business opportunities. I know after 1986, after Bhopal tragedy, there were several regulatory changes happened in India, and they hoped that the PM 2.0 and all this clean air program, will help them. Whereas in the United States, we keep on coming up with the new rules, regulations, and things like that, which is good for me for my business. But on the macro level, how United States, the people in this country are safe because of the health and all of them, barring the COVID-19 situation. But relatively speaking, that's how it is. Um, when I was giving a seminar back 20 years ago in Bombay, and one of the audience who stood up and he said, Dr. Kasinathan, tell me the percent of air cleaner in the United States. I said about 90-95%. How about in India? Probably about 50%. Then he said, so are you telling us that the Indians deserve only 50% of the air? I said, no, I didn't say that. You are saying that, because, we are trying to give you a bicycle to get to A to B, but whereas in the United States, they drive Maseratis and all of them. The point is that how truthful the regulatory changes in India, and how is it enforced. I like Aishwarya Rai, but if Aishwarya Rai comes and have photo op with the president, prime minister, and one day cleaning the street, is not going to get to the streets of everywhere cleaner and the environment. So there must be a compliance audit opportunity, annual continuity, and right there, there's a lot of opportunities in this time people can think of. I'm not being critical of India. I'm just telling there's opportunities. So let's think about a little bit about American politics that obviously will have lots of interest around the world. November 3rd is the election. Don't know. It will be President Trump or Joe Biden, Vice President Joe Biden. But I think that this China issue is every day discussed all over the world. And one day market goes up because China is going to be working with the United States. The other day market goes 1,000 points low. So in this situation, as a small company, we can think of so many things. So where would you do the business? Um, I think that India is a market, but there's a lot of problem there. But the positive thing is English, skilled workers, technology. The one thing that I don't like is the take it for granted attitude. In other words, நம்ம தமிழ்ல இந்த ஊரு இப்படிதாப்பா, whatever you do, இந்த ஊரு இப்படிதாப்பா. That bothers me a lot. So we got to overcome that. And Singapore, I learned that about 4,000 US firms, love to do business. They are doing business there because of it's a small company. It's very transparent, business friendly, and Americans love. If there is a Lex Life, I would probably do my business there. um, Whatever it is, wherever it is, enforcement, accountability, reporting, and record keeping areas have a large potential where you can build a digital platform to be continuously for recurring revenues. So that said, let me go to my business. 22 years, the other speaker, I mean, moderator already explained about my business. I'll go to a few slides. Our objective is provide a state-of-the-art comprehensive environmental compliance assistance at relatively low cost. That's the key, relatively low cost, and I mean it. So in fact, our services are probably half as much as the regular my competitions. But I have to work twice. So in my math, we have to work 4 times harder to get the same amount of money that any other competitions does. But that's okay. That I think that to me, my principle is I would rather be winning a bid at 50% rather losing a contract at $200,000. So that's the strategy. So we can recover this in another area. So other areas. So then we go to our expertise, air, waste, water, pollution technologies, and respective compliance assessment. And so we do all this modeling part of it. Modeling is if there is any industry that has a potential of combustion sources of emissions, we would be able to do mathematical modeling to predict the ground level concentrations and compare them with the government standards, and then accordingly we permit them. When we permit them, my clients will have the flexibility of the permit where the regulatory burden can be reduced. If there are facilities that have sources that have installed without proper permit, the government will have the obligation through the Congress to penalize them at $37,500 per day, up to 180 days. That's where the accountability comes. That that countries like India lacks, and when they enforce, they do charge, they do get the penalties paid. So people like us go in, we mitigate the penalties by a properly complying with the compliance methodologies, and and then the regulatory agencies. By the way, I have, as I mentioned, Mr. Radhakrishnan is here also in the audience. He used to be the director of New York City, one of the largest cities in the country. They have a very huge responsibility of keeping people safe with the environmental compliance. So he is very well aware of what I'm talking about. The Congress had authorized US EPA to go after 180 days. So you do the math. For a simple violation slip, it'll be almost some $1 million of penalty. So we go in, we mitigate, and then the agency will ask, how do you in going forward? How do you keep it from not coming in? So that's why my software part comes in. And this is a compliance tracking software that we created. We copyrighted the software at the United States Library of Congress. This software automatically detects the violations, and then it also gives the mitigation measures, and then we sign and seal, and we take the responsibility. If there is a penalty, that point forward, we take care of it. So this is another key point that I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of clear understanding of what we do. These are the tents most of the hospitals had right in the beginning of March. And the interesting thing is that when everyone was concerned about it and so on and so forth, and we came up with this tent design, speaking with the manufacturers and the installers of the tent, and we have to get these approvals from the building department commissioner. Without the approval, these tents cannot be put on the streets of the hospital. And there's the Department of Transportation is involved, Department of Health is involved, the state, and all of them. So we came up with this. One of our clients called the Kasi. I need to get this right away. Can you do something? So we worked on this letter, procedure lined up here. I signed the seal, and all our engineers and VP and everybody, talked to the commissioner. We sent out these letters, and then we got about 4 or 5 tents installed for one of our client sites. Next day, about 10 o'clock, my vice president is calling me. He says, "Did you see this email?" One of the clients is sending this email to him saying that, Ramesh, please, follow this procedure and get us tested for other hospitals. And I opened this. This is my own letter goes out to all over the place. The commissioner stuck out, his name, and he left everything else. So this 10th opportunity, well, I mean, it's bad that COVID-19 came up, created this, but resilient. We did not hesitate to to respond to this crisis, and we took responsibility of the tent installations against the speed of the wind and the rain and the fire and all of them. We are periodically inspecting and submitting reports. That's where the responsibility comes with on both sides, public and the government. The government says that, like in Singapore, you guys call this as the land of the law. Same here, but we have people have a lot of input in here, but then people have to follow, and that's why the responsibility related business makes us resilient. So what we did the early incentives we provided all the PPEs, and I created space to cubicle space, and so again reduce the cost, innovation with the technologies. In the midst of pandemic, I'm happy to report that my business would have probably grown at least 20%, and I expect to grow more because we are resilient. Okay. In a macro level, the Stanford University research tells that not only the CDC scientists, not only the medical doctors, not only microbiologists, epidemiologists have to have this COVID-19 as part of their ongoing research. No, I think as environmental engineers, as a digital IT professionals, we can also do a lot of things. Develop models to predict the environmental survival of the viruses, understand mechanistically what the composition of environmental factors. So these are the areas that I thought some potentials exist. So what do we do? We need to assess the financial damage. Take a second look at the business plan. Um, when I say second look, what you cannot measure, you cannot manage. You have to measure and monitor. So therefore, you have to measure your business at all times. Consider whether you will need funding to recover, budget to account for new spending, develop a timeline for rebuilding, and contingency plan. The one thing that I also learned, which this crisis taught me, is that we have been doing business for the past 22 years with the Chase, the largest United States, the world's largest bank. When the COVID-19, the payroll protection plan came, the government incentives, the Chase Bank that I had for years with the millions of dollars with them, whatever, they couldn't do this, funding program for us. Luckily, I had a small community bank that came along, and they helped me to get this PPE funding from the government. What I mean by that is that you just don't depend upon one bank. Have a relationship with the multiple banks, so that who knows who will come in handy to help you out. So, so recovering revenues, rebuilding operations, rethinking the organizations, adoption to digital solutions. We talked about it all the time. So these are the four things. So embracing the future, um, automation and technology. Okay, so the maybe I have the other slide later on. Learn how to complete tasks remotely using digital communications. One simple thing, I'm not an IT guy. One simple thing, how any business can survive. Simple thing, just put your all the files and all your documents in cloud, and that's it. So rather than depending upon your on-site server, cloud. Anybody, you as a business owner can log in, your employees can log in, and you will be able to remotely. This is a very simple thing. Okay, so so these are all the advantage of the IoT, which we all know. Okay, automation technology. Okay, you talked about. Okay, so the last bullet, vital points are train, cross train, and retrain and retain employees. Okay, let me touch a little bit on this one. for example, training and cross training is that it's very key in a small business to be resilient. Is that if you have a guy who is specialized in air pollution in my business, right? What I do is, I also want him to take a minor as a water pollution too. So this guy can do air and water. One guy can do hazardous waste, other guy can the same guy can do soil. If one of these two guys leave, the other guy can pick up the other area. So I don't lose that expertise. The danger here is if these two guys combine, the four areas are screwed up. But we should be able to lock them up. I mean, bind them with all these, non-compete, all kind of legal tight documents. There are ways, but this one area that I thought this very, successful way you train people and cross-train them so that you can retain. And in construction industry, for example, if one guy is a construction engineer, the same guy can do QE, QC. Then we can so on, keep on going with the way that this how you retain. This way you can keep the employees and preserve work, less attrition, and you can handle more challenges. So conclusion. Okay, the business leaders now we have a sense of what we can do, what we cannot do. President Obama thinks that it's a long road to go, very long road to go, and I think that that is true because there are so many unknowns that we have. And obviously, Bill Gates thinks that with the right tools and the data, we should be able to tackle these situations. But we must be in the driver's seat. You cannot slip at the wheel. Okay. So there's no more traditional way of doing businesses because certainty and uncertainty are interchangeable because you don't know. We did not know. Again, as I said, COVID-19 was the real case. No, that's not the case. So pursue new opportunities. There is plenty of out there waiting for us to take for us to embrace. Workplace innovations to do more with less. I told you micro versus micro. Okay, for find better and simpler, less expensive and faster ways to operate. Remember the formula: one minus one is zero, meaning collaborate, be resilient, and diversify. Increase the speed and productivity of these solutions. Stay ahead of the curve and image how to recover, operate, organize, and use technology as we return to work can set the foundations for ending success. In all, what I wanted to conclude is that there is hope, and we can handle this, and we have handled this, before 9/11. We survived, and we will survive, and there's plenty of opportunity. I take this opportunity to thank all of Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kashi. Good, lot of coverage.
Thank you, sir. Yeah. So, Dr. Kasi, thank you very much for making our evening,
You are very welcome. Hi,
making
Sambat.
our making our evening very meaningful and sharing your personal experience. This is not only
I'll be
rejuvenating, but it is also making more positive thinking amidst COVID pandemic. Resilience is the key. Cash is the king. Survival of the fittest. Crisis is the mother of innovation. Never give up attitude. Keep moving forward. These are all the very, very positive inspiration we learned from you. And being the moderator, I take the luxury of asking the first question. Third, what do you think of the employment going forward? Automation is the future. Yes, we all agree. I think in my definition, I call Industry 4.0 is computing, with edge computing and cloud computing all coming up, and then connectivity, NB-IoT, and then 5G all coming up, and cognitivity, which is artificial intelligence and machine learning and deep learning. But the growth is definitely there, but it's going to be jobless growth. So, what is your advice for the young engineers who just started their career? So, this is my question to you, Dr. Kasi.
I'm not so sure how it's going to be because, as I said, there's a lot of unknown is going on right now. I think that my hope is that everyone has to be trained and retrained. The unemployment right now is in the United States about 15%. It's going to change within the next within the next 2 to 3 months period of time. It's going to change. But the question is again, employment in the US for people outside of the United States is going to be almost less than, not even, I want to say almost zero. It's impossible because of A, from the previous and current politics, and B, because of the current COVID-19 situations. But the way that I think is that in the last 3 weeks, I hired two new engineers because my business is growing now. I'm trying to get into new areas. I'll just give you an example. I don't want to discuss too many, technology. I mean, technical engineering stuff. But right after this COVID-19, some of the hospitals, some of my university clients want do new ways to look at whether the UV related, ultraviolet related radiation system can be installed in all floors because there is a science behind it where this UV radiation can kill the virus. So that's one new area. So we are now putting plans in place. So we are hiring people. I think these are the areas that the employment is going to be generated, for at least for another 5 years. So this COVID-19 related business is going to be, whoever is getting ahead of the game will be employed. There's no doubt about it.
Thank you, sir. Actually, first of all, congratulations on growing your business by 15 to 20% amidst this COVID situation. Actually, congratulations for that.
Thank you.
We have
Thank you.
few questions from our colleagues here. One of the question is from actually three questions from Mr. Ram Tilak. So one is, we want recession versus pandemic situation. Recession is for a specific industry or specific area or country, but pandemic is unfortunately to all across the globe. So how to survive in this? That's one of the questions. And the second question from me is, which has got a scope in the current pandemic situation, trading or manufacturing activity?
I think it's both. It's both. You cannot manufacture anything, without trading. I think lot will be dependent upon November election. I strongly believe in that because um, the market. I'm only speaking from the perspective of United States. I'm not
Yeah,
a global expert on
understood.
business, but but I think here everything is on hold. I'm sure many of the US participants here will agree. The market generally likes the Republicans. Okay, whether it is fair or not.
No question.
Uh, However, I'm not digressing from the question. I'm trying to collect my thoughts in terms of US perspective. And
Yeah,
ever since Trump came into the office, and it has always been China, China, China. So in that, many people made money, many people lost money. Okay, but I think that currently in the last market does not necessarily, like Republicans or Democrats, because as we all recall, when President Clinton left, the market extremely was happy with him as well as with the President, Obama.
Obama.
So now, regardless of who is going to come, I think market he is going to continue to do well. So in that case, I think that to me, trading and the manufacturing, both are going to do much better because, again, whoever is going to be resilient, whoever is going to be following the trend of, low cost, uh, more at less cost is going to be the winner.
Yeah, absolutely, sir. So one more question from Ram Tilak is, what are all the scope for Indian firms to do business with US, especially in manufacturing lines now and in future? I believe Modi and President Modi and Prime Minister Modi and President
Yeah,
US President, they have very good friendship. I don't know how that is going to uh, turn up in the November
yeah.
elections.
Yeah, two things, Ram, is that since we are, 50% of my household is medical doctors. They keep telling me about the telemedicine.
Telemedicine, yeah.
Telemedicine, one of the biggest thing that whatever Indian, skill set can set the platform for telemedicine. That's going to be the case. The other thing is, so we have to kind of wait. So the idea of Prime Minister Modi and Trump talk about is that medications and again the vaccine. As soon as this some kind of stage is going to be discovered, I think in India will have plenty of roles to play associated with it. There are other all other industries will survive around it. I think auxiliary industries.
Yeah, that's correct.
That's
We
my
don't know how it will change with Democrats coming. Joe Biden is coming. I'm not sure. Let's wait and see. Um, Another question from Murthy.
can hear
Global.
you.
Sorry,
I
Dr.
can
Kasim.
hear you.
You can hear me. Can
No,
you hear me
no.
now? Oh, that's strange. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah, yes, yeah.
Okay, great. Another question from Murthy. Global warming and impact of climate changes, sea level rising are very much concerned currently among the global scientists. So there was a prediction that sea level going to rise 2 meters in another 100 years. So what is your view on this, and how, from your perspective, how do we really prevent it, or how to reduce or delay the sea level rising?
Oh, that's a very loaded question. It's an excellent question. I don't know whether I can answer in in one sentence, but we published a lot of papers on those things, and all these theories. Um, One thing for sure is that I don't know where to. Reports, record keeping, and accountability is the key for global warming prevention. I do by one country, but it's not just the responsibility of one country. It's a global. There are so many, Kyoto protocols and Montreal protocols where countries come in and then they sign the biggest culprits. I would say in my, if I'm not brutal, is China and India, and they don't care. If you look at these 2 plus billion people that don't care about, they don't care about the pollution, they don't care about their neighborhood, and how do you think that it's going to be possible? The global warming is an issue where there are still, for example, President Trump does not believe the things that he does not believe in, and he cut all the EPA staff and funding and so on and so forth. It's not going to. There's you need money, you need the funding to take care of all these things. I think issue that we have. And going back to again macro level versus micro level, what we do in our company is protect the air, the land, and the way water by doing. Success of my business is based on one single word called mandated, mandatory. In other words, I go to the client and say, look, you need to do this. If you don't do this, you are going to get this penalty. $37,500. My software is only about $10,000. It's no brainer, So he buys that, he takes care of it. But by doing so, we let's state, and then 100 clients, nitrogen oxide, NOx pollutants, sulfur dioxide pollutants, particulate emissions. We are able to control them in a way. I mean, after traveling this 30 some years of environmental engineering, there is no such a thing called allowable safe standard. Nothing is safe, okay? And in the same token, there is nothing like zero emissions. If somebody says that zero emissions, it's not possible too. We are all engineers, we are all business people, we know anything to be produced, there has to be some kind of pollution, whether it's a particulate matter or whether it is a NOx or sulfur dioxide, because we are burning something. You need heat to produce anything. So, but every country has to be responsible. I think that again, I go back to November 3rd. I don't know how from this country as well as the two key countries that I talk about.
Okay. Thank you, sir. I believe both you should be happy with your answer. Another question from Guru is that the business you are doing in US, for the universities and the hospitals, so definitely is applicable, outside United States. So, what is your strategy expanding your business outside United States, especially in India? So that's a
Oh,
question.
that's a very easy question. um, Well, definitely, we can do. But the thing is, and I tried my best back in early 90s, to do this in India. So I had opened this office primarily, I mean, on two ends. One is the technology, the software. The other one is to open this up to do. Um but I honestly, I just thought that not necessarily for money, and whatever we learned, we have, including Mr. Radhakrishnan, who is on this audience. We used to sit and talk about, we all are experts in our own field here. Why don't we take this and go to India where we can do something, right? And we had a lot of plans and so on and so forth. And we were not successful. And in fact, I lost shirt. Leaders and this and all of them. And again, I'm not very cynical about India. It is what it is. Indoor இப்படிதான். Uh, but I think there is an opportunity.
Yes.
There are definitely opportunities. This business model, my business model, can very well fit. But the question is, as I explained, here is my platform, and I'm going toward. It's a comparison at the end of the day. Okay, mandated. Hey, this is what you have to have. This is my business. With the penalty and all of them. So I have to find a way which country has that kind of enforceable opportunities. Okay. One thing is to do things for your own country to pay back for whatever. But even if I'm willing to do something, it's not. I can give you is that the two ideas of my thesis of the bioplastic, meaning take paper mill fines. Okay, so after some time, you cannot recycle the paper anymore because the stability and the strength, and then it becomes fines. So you take the fines, and then the fines has sugar in it, cellulose, glucose, because it's coming from tree. So obviously, we found a way to extract the sugar from the paper mill. It's about 40% of the glucose we were able to convert, and then add microorganisms to convert them into bioplastics. So, and then I also found a way to add coconut coir pit, which has the similar characteristics in the ultimate analysis, and we wanted to combine pyral plant strategies. And then a friend of mine, my classmate, from Satur, he
There's chopping. I can't hear you. I don't know others can hear you.
now,
No audio.
Yeah.
hear me?
Dr. Kasi, I can't hear. I'm not sure whether others can. Yeah, others can.
We have to unmute. We have to unmute all the people. I want to mute all the people
Yeah, please except me.
except you and Kasi.
Yes. Dr. Kasi, can you hear me, please?
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Yeah, please go on. So I think so. I think let's stop at that. Definitely, India is complex and challenging. It's a question of sustain and succeed in our own country. Uh, yeah, I think, but we still need to do that. So one another question from Selvaraj. Sir, can you hear me? Sir, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. So one question from Selvaraj is a bit challenging. He says, like, he's asking a question that, is China is the only beneficial, country taking advantage of the post-COVID recovery. So how, other countries can adopt that model, because we all know that, the virus came from China, and they took the advantage of leading. But how other countries are going to recover from the post-COVID situation, how they are growing their GDP, or the market amidst the challenging future at least next 1 year.
Yeah, it is a hard question because there are a lot of unknowns.
Yeah,
That definitely is the case. And also, see what this COVID-19 did is that some leaders were fast. Okay, like in Singapore, they take quick actions, right? They found ways, and because Singapore is very well advanced in the technology, and you guys they came up with this, the tracing process, right? And then the tracing process helped us a lot. My challenge here is that all these Indian people with these highly talented technologies. What happened? Did we just believe that this temperature and the Indian people are immune, and that's not the case. Okay,
yes,
and here we were told that this will fly away. That didn't fly away,
yeah,
and we were, my wife and we were in China during the time.
yeah,
I think end of November. I mean, beginning of October, we were in China. In fact, we were in Wuhan for 3 days. We didn't see this coming, but and I think all the conspiracy theories and things like that.
yeah,
And I get what I'm saying is that now that we know that the see again, I don't want to be accused of being critical of any political leaders. The point being is that we have these intelligence, we have the technologies, we have all these things. How did we fail to predict these things to come?
yeah,
I just want to take one quick minute. I don't want to take everybody's time.
yeah,
And in the early 90s, so we were doing an environmental air quality studies for National Library of Medicine, NLM, National Library of
yeah,
Medicine. That's where Dr. Fauci is coming and talking about
yeah,
every day. And that's the National Library of Medicine. The scope of work was to protect all these old books, historical books, from relative humidity and so on and so forth. Anyway, make the story short, we were doing the air quality modeling and also, and I was browsing. I was a nosy guy all the time anyway. So I was pulling some of the library books, and I found two books, almost like a 500, 600-year-old books, written about Siddha medicines and Ayurvedic medicine, so on and so forth. It's a pretty old book. And I talked to this director. What are these books doing here? What is this? Oh, Kasi, you don't know this. Who knows, man? In 100 years from now, there will be some pandemic about this, and we want to go back to refer this book. So, what did we do now? What happened? I think somewhere somebody slept at the wheels. But I think in all seriousness, I think we as a small business, if we are cognizant of the fact that if we all do what all we can do and adopt new ways, okay.
yeah,
So that's what we do. Whatever happens now, we are just putting the all the technologies together, and then always try to stay ahead of the game and to provide services. The bigger question, how other countries are going to do, I think that those two areas that I talk about, I think that has a lot of potential, which is the telemedicine, as
yeah,
well as try to find some ways. So it's a cyclic, right? It's always
absolutely.
changes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So another question from NP Prasad, that so in this pandemic, a lot of companies may go bankrupt and some may survive, and a lot of companies also depending on the manpower, the human manpower. And unlike other software companies that like AWS and Google, they're all growing, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like AWS is growing big time,
Yeah. Yeah.
at
Yeah.
this point
Yeah.
of time.
Yeah.
So, what is your advice about the companies totally relying on the manpower? I think definitely the digitalization is the way. Um, Even the other companies growing, amid the epidemic, this pandemic, the AWS is going big. So, what do you think, and what's your advice for others
I
who's
think, yeah, right, right.
yeah,
That's really a very brilliant question
yeah,
because I think the employee, as the those I touched on that those that are less resilient and survive,
yeah,
a because of their own monetary issues. Okay, so they did not leave enough money in the company to protect
yeah,
people,
yeah,
and and obviously it's a sad situation. To turn that into a positive thing is that the employee, those who are capable, able, and with the skill set, they can always be hired. Okay, so like
yeah,
I said, I just hired two people. That's a possibility there. The companies that went into bankruptcy, I think, I can only speak for US numbers. Right now, it's about 2.5 months government provided. In other words, you take your payroll, you take your all your rents and lights and whatever benefits and everything, you multiply by they got they got into their bank. Okay, if they think that they declared bankruptcy, they really cannot blame the government or the crisis. Okay, so they should be and try to bounce back. Okay, so if they didn't do that, and then like I was saying before,
yeah,
those are the companies that more than 50% of them had difficulties even before pre-COVID-19. Okay, that's my opinion. And bear in mind, we all are in business one way or the other. Some are in big corporate giants. You are all there, and the statistics show that more than 50% of small businesses fail in 5 years. Okay, so that's because of the same fact that you are talking about.
yeah.
The obedience, the discipline, and the lack of focus to where you are going.
Yes, sir. So there's a question from Sundar. I think that's an interesting question because right now the supply chain is completely disrupted all over the world,
Mm.
and most of the countries depend on China. Chinese goods. So it's completely disrupted. The supply chain is completely disrupted with this COVID situation. So the question is that how this will change the countries depending on themselves, self-reliance, for example. And so, what is your view on that self-reliance? Like, for example, America is going to go for more self-reliance rather relying on China, maybe even India, going that way. So, what is your perspective, sir?
I think US will always look at wherever in US there are a couple of things. One is the government, the other one is the corporate America. Corporate America doesn't give a damn. Corporate America goes wherever there is a opportunity with the labor, and you all know what
Yeah,
Microsoft, Bill
that's
Gates
right.
will say. If you don't give me opportunity, I will set up Microsoft in Bangalore. So I think that will continue. But again, there is we have to wait and see how this November 3rd is going to be played out, because they all learned, but the reliance upon China, in my opinion, is going to be diminished. I think so. That said, there is a South America.
Yeah,
It's a possibility, and Singapore, definitely
Vietnam
India
is
is
coming up big.
definitely yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. Perfect. Okay, thank you, sir. So another question from Ilangovan. So this one, the question is like, America is predominantly a kind of consumer economy. With the consumer economy, will it remain the same? Uh, because a lot of countries, depending on export to United States. So how that will turn up? I think that's a question from Elangovan.
Yeah, no, it'll remain to be a consumer economy, but right now, like I said, many of American small businesses, I think they are taking this advantage
Yeah.
to come back to productions and manufacturing. I think that's going to start probably because
Yeah.
they are not going to depend upon the faraway supply chain. They are going to be thinking about, so the distance is the key now. I think that
Yeah.
definitely is going to, but it's going to take some time. It's not going to be, and not only that, I think if you really think about that, if there is a prediction of almost like a 30 to 50% of GDP down for the next few years, then obviously the cost of making goods is going to be increased because of all the local supply chain, local products, and local labor. See, local labor is very expensive here, right?
Yeah.
But I think when you think about the reality of where we are at now, nobody can question any prices anymore. We are going to live to the new normal.
That's right.
Okay. Yeah.
That's right. So, I think another question from Prasad that a lot of startups are mushrooming. Actually, startups are also depending on the cash flow. So in this situation, because no funding coming up, if the startup with good funding, I think they will survive. If they got Series A and Series B, they can survive. So how the startup, without that funding, how they are going to survive in the next 2 to 3 years? And also another question is that because with the new normal is all about disruption, actually, the technology disruption and
Mhm.
exponential growth, etc., etc. So how the new normal is going to change the world? For example, like even though we stopped flying completely when we were
Yeah.
kids,
Yeah.
we used to run behind the aeroplanes whenever we saw in the sky. But now I think the same situation now. I really have to look at the sky that where is the aeroplane actually. So the flights are not running, and now we have got into the Zoom as connecting ourselves. So, what is your perspective on how the world is going to change in the new normal in terms of technology disruption, in terms of sustainability of these technology companies coming up?
Uh, that's a nice question. I want to go back to what Dr. Fauci, CDC director, told Friday, I think, that until you have the vaccinations, everything is slow. Everything is slow. Nobody can.
They did
Uh,
do that, and
yeah,
then
they the vaccine is. They are saying that it's in the third stage. I believe, and I think they expect about 2021 sometime around like June, July something. I think until such time, nobody can give you answer to this
Exactly.
question. Okay.
Yeah, I think
Uh,
once I hear from Dr. Fauci said that the virus decides.
yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah, right. That's absolutely right. Yeah, right. And then all these a lot of stories that coming out of all these conspiracy theories of Dr. Fauci's very word is that until the vaccination is there, and then I get vaccinated, so I can get plane. Plane is going to fly. I'm telling you, it's going to fly. We are going to sail. We are going to drive. Life is going to be normal. But new normal, it depends. Who you speak to. We have been working, and so I think we are going to be fine. Now we are in again. I go back to what Sundar Pichai was telling, is that because of the technology, now we know we have more knowledge to invent. 1918.
yeah.
So I'm very hopeful. Okay. So until such time, I don't know the answer to that question.
So there's another question for last question. I think it's from Murthy that we all know that Elon Musk is already on his mission to sending the people to Mars.
Uh-huh.
So I think his question is he's asking a question that when is the timeline for going to moon? Migrating the people to moon. So that's a question from Murthy. So as we know that, as I said, that's why I said, if Elon Musk is already on track to send the people to Mars. So what is your perspective?
So Murthy, do you have a Tesla stock? I do. I drive one of those cars. I am a very big fan of Elon Musk,
Elon Musk, yeah.
and I doubt. I seriously doubt in our lifetime we will see. I want to buy real estate. There's no doubt about it, but I doubt very much. So he's very excited and he has lots of great ideas because he has money. He will
Yeah.
accomplish what he did. That's not to say we may not, but I think realistically speaking, I just don't think so.
Thank you, sir. I think it has been a really wonderful evening talking to you. And a lot of people have given their applause. A lot of people have given the cheers. Thanks to you and everyone, the audience here, and they really enjoyed your session. So now we will end the Q&A. I will hand it over to Anba for word of thanks and for Santosh for word of thanks. Santosh?
It's Rajesh.
Rajesh. Sorry, Rajesh.
Okay.
Sorry.
Hi, Guru.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we end today's event, I would like to thank you all for taking time from your busy schedule to attend today's session. Very glad to see around 50 participants joining our session today through Zoom from many countries. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Dr. Kasinathan for sharing his expertise with us. We hope that you found Dr. Kasinathan's sharing and Q&A session informative. It's undeniable that good facilitation plays a crucial role. So greatly appreciate today's moderator, Mr. Ravi Kumar, for making this session very successful and helping to manage the Q&A part very effectively. An event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheels started rolling weeks ago. We have been fortunate enough to have a motivated and dedicated volunteers of Annamalai University Alumni Association Singapore chapter. A special appreciation to the subcommittee leader, Mr. Karunanidhi, for the man behind this webinar. May I request you to turn on your video, please, Mr. Karunanidhi. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Karu. Yeah, just
Thank
wait.
you,
Yeah,
thank you very much.
thank you. Yeah. For doing all these invitations, flyers.
So as we know that, as I said, Elon Musk is already on track to
So
send the
Murthy,
people to
do you
Mars.
have a?
Oh, sorry.
I drive one of those.
Anyway, for doing all these invitation flyers and hosting YouTube Live, I want to thank Mr. Murali and Mr. Anbalagan. Big applause to both. May I request you to turn on your video, please, Mr. Anbalagan and Mr. Murali.
Hi.
Yeah. And last but not least, I want to thank you all for your participation once again. Without your continued support, we would never be able to put on events like this. So big thank you to everyone. I look forward for your continued support to all our upcoming events.
And everyone,
With this, I end my thank you note. Bye everyone. Stay safe.
enjoy
எல்லாம் unmute ஒரு class கொடுக்கலாம் எல்லாருக்கும்.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
It's Rajesh. Yes.
Rajesh, sorry. Sorry, Rajesh.
Ladies and gentlemen, as we end today's event, I would like to very glad to see around 50 participants joining our session today through Zoom from many countries. I would like to express my expertise with us. We hope that you found Dr. Kasinathan's sharing and Q&A. Good facilitation plays a crucial role. So greatly appreciate today's moderator, Mr. Ravi Kumar, for making the Q&A part very effectively. An event like this cannot happen overnight. The things started rolling weeks ago. We have been part of Annamalai University Alumni Association Singapore chapter. A special appreciation to the subcommittee leader, Mr. Karunanidhi, for the man behind these webinars. May I request you to turn on your video, please, Mr. Karunanidhi. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Karu.
Thank you very much. Thanks to everybody who joining the webinar
Do we-
today.
Yeah, things repeating. So let me. Yeah, so.
You know the answers I said.
See, they have a, I think, I
No,
try one of
sorry.
those.
Right. I want to thank Mr. Murali and Mr. Anbalagan. Big applause to both. Very Murali. Yeah. And last but not least, I want to thank you all for your participation once again. Events like this. So big thank you to everyone. I look forward for your continued support to all our upcoming events. With this, I end my thank you note. Bye everyone. Stay safe.
Class
Thank you, sir.
Go to
Sorry.
Sorry, Rajesh.
Ladies and gentlemen, glad to see around 50 participants joining our session today. So, from a weekend.